Welcome to the Rehab Links Secrets to Success podcast. I'm Lisa Chase, your host, and today I have a wonderful guest, Nicole Walczak. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
We've talked about this for quite a while, and I'm very excited to have your perspective and for you to share with our audience. So I'm going to have you share a little bit about you, but I want to tell our audiences how you and I met. So Nicole is an amazing business coach with a company called MEG Business that I hired several years ago. I have as many listeners may know, I have a private cash-based practice. But I was really struggling with processes and structures and stat sheets and metrics and all these things that are, beyond just taking care of our patients, that are so important to running a successful practice and ultimately setting an environment where we can get great outcomes for our patients. And so I've been working with Nicole for several years, and she has helped me in so many ways. So I'm excited to have her share her insights and how, she's been working with private practices around the country. And so I want her to kind of share a little bit about, give us some, information about your background, kind of where you came from and where you're and what you're doing today.
So I started out my journey as a physical therapist and worked the majority of my career in the clinic setting, so in the outpatient ortho setting. And I, I married my, I guess, college sweetheart who was supposed to be a PT, but decided to do a little bait and switch and became an orthopedic surgeon after we graduated. So long story short, it took me on a little winding path, which I thought, I would be a PT in the clinic forever. But thankfully, it's kind of brought me to where I am today. And throughout the course of working in these clinics, I happened to meet Brian Gallagher, who is the founder of MEG. And at the time, this is like back in 2011, I was working in a clinic in Michigan. And he came in and consulted us. And I got to see all the training kind of firsthand. If I applied it, the stats and all those processes and everything got better. So I was like, well, I'm a believer in this. So years later, he was looking to bring someone on who would help develop a training platform that was not limited to him, flying all over the country and sharing the consulting advice, that it would kind of be able to be evolved and change and grow year over year and be more accessible to more people. Yeah. So in 2016, I joined MEG Business Management. And at the time, I worked pretty solely in what we call MEG Academy. And that's one of the divisions of MEG. It's our education division. And so essentially, I helped build the virtual training curriculum, and that's how you and I met, Lisa, throughout the coaching of interactions with that. Essentially, what we do is help kind of bridge the gap from when you graduate physical therapy school to when you become an owner, because as you know, in school, you don't spend a lot of time training on those things. So that's, a big part of what I do at MEG, among other things. So
yes, and so I think, and since then, it's probably been since COVID, you guys have also developed a virtual front desk. So tell us a little bit about, about that and how that's integrating into practices.
Yes. So it's actually, I believe, 3 years ago at PPS, or like right around PPS time, I was like, oh man, we need to come up with some different solutions because people are struggling. I mean, it was like in the midst of the pandemic, you couldn't have people in your waiting room. And, it was just a mess for, I'm sure, a lot of your listeners and, a lot of our owners, because we work with probably, I think, over 200 owners now throughout the country, struggled during this time. So I knew we had to come up with a solution to kind of solve that long term. So the virtual front desk was just an idea I had to allow owners to outsource their entire front desk operations to us, MEG, who have been training on this stuff for years and years and years. So we launched our first kind of pilot of the program, our first beta testers in April of last year. And we have since grown to almost 40 clinics that we're working with. Yes, and coming up on our 2-year anniversary here. So it's been something that people have needed. It essentially, it's still a live person who's engaging with your patients, but we're 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional in the clinic. But we're doing all the things, you know, all the checking in, the collecting of copays, the behind the scenes work, the answering the phone calls, the following up on plans of cares and referrals and things of that nature. So it's one less thing for owners to have to worry about and manage. We take that on so that you guys, you know, the owners can focus on what they need to focus on to improve their practice.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so I know that you work with practices around the country. So I love for our listeners, because I'm sure many of our listeners are not only clinicians, but some may be business owners, right?
Sure.
So what would you say, like maybe the top 3 things that kind of come up time and time again for practice owners that you are, you know, helping to coach them through?
Yeah. So I'm going to take 4.
Okay. Of course, good.
Because as a clinician, I kind of approach an evaluation of a practice very much like I would approach the evaluation of a patient. Like you can take the clinician out of the PT office, but you can't take, you know what I mean? Whatever
I love that.
thing goes. Because so I very like systematically assess a business that way. And my recommendation, whether you're a clinician, a clinical director, an owner, I feel like you can kind of take the same approach with whatever office and whatever capacity you're working in. So we train very heavily at MEG on the 4 keys to private practice success. So those 4 keys are, and the kind of the 4 things I'm going to touch on today are environment, structure, personnel, and systems of operation.
Yes.
So environment, that's you think it's like a fairly simple one. But I feel like sometimes it kind of gets pushed aside and overlooked. And I think what we have to keep in mind that is our patient's experience starts not only the minute they talk to someone on the phone, but when they walk through those doors, they're already, kind of judging their experience.
Yes.
So if we have, paints that's chipped on the wall or equipment that's not fully up to snuff, or, if the tools that you're providing your clinicians or using as clinicians aren't kind of that cutting edge, state of the art equipment, it becomes very difficult to get the results that you're looking to get from those patients. So I think the first recommendation I would say is to just kind of audit yourself or audit the practice that you're a part of and do a walkthrough. I actually shared with you, Lisa, and this is a link that you can share on the podcast notes.
Okay.
The show notes. It's actually an evaluation tool that it kind of is like a mini course within MEG Academy.
Nice.
So your listeners can kind of go through this and at least get you to start thinking about some of these things. But if you can just start with like a self-audit and just, walk through the doors as if you're a patient, kind of put yourself in the patient mindset and navigate through and take notes of the things that you might, want to invest a little bit of time or money or effort into making better so that your patient's experience is better. The other part is we deal with a lot of startups. So, finding that right place and getting the right location and being able to do a market analysis so you have kind of a structured way to go about choosing your location that you can find in this little mini course as well. Just, some tips and tricks to go through a market analysis because, location is key and accessibility is key.
Well, I love that first point, and it's so funny because we just had a staff meeting, and that's exactly what I talked about was
Good.
creating an experience for the patient, right? Whether it be having our diffusers going, having the right kind of music, just how you set the scene. We have a 5-star model at Back to Normal, so it's just, creating that 5-level star service and thinking about how, I love how you're saying, go through your whole office and walk through not only how you set the standard, but how do you elevate that standard, right?
Right, right. People
To
have a lot of choices these
Yeah,
days,
yes,
and how they feel, like that gut feeling when they first walk in, that's part of their decision-making process. So
love
yeah,
that.
I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, that was your first.
Okay, so that's environment.
Number one.
Structure. This is so, so, so important. And I don't care if you are a single solo practitioner, kind of just getting started, or you have 10 offices. Structure is what is going to, be there to help support the growth over the years, over time. And the structure that we train on is a 5-division structure. So division 1 would be like your admin communications division, like your front desk will kind of live here, HR. Division 2 would be marketing, both internal and external. And a lot of that has kind of gone digital these days.
Oh, yeah.
Division 3 would be finance division, and that's like where your bookkeeping and accounting, and if you do insurance space, where your billers would live. Division 4 would be production division, and that's our, the clinicians, the clinical director, the clinicians would live in that division. And then finally, the CEO and executive division is Division 5. The important thing here, and this is kind of the take-home message, is when you kind of build out these divisions, what's important to kind of keep in mind is the people that belong in that division, not only mapping out what all their duties are, which is important. Your front desk person, for example, yes, they're going to answer phones. Yes, they're going to check people in, but that's not what you're paying them for. That's not what the exchange is. What you're paying them for is their product, or, like that what you're trying to get out of them. And that is to have all patients arriving on time as scheduled throughout the duration of care. So that's the message that I want to get across here, is making sure whatever position it is on your team, that they fully understand what their, end responsibility is, what their main purpose for being there is. And then you have to have a way to measure it. So there's statistics that are associated with every position in your company. And for the front desk, it so happens to be the percent of kept appointments, the percent of prescribed, they're scheduled 2 times a week for 4 weeks, that, they're adhering to that plan of care. And of course, you want to get paid for what you do. So over the counter money's collected, you're going to be measuring them on. So going through and analyzing, each position in your company and making sure that person understands what their ultimate responsibility is and how they're going to be measured for their performance. And again, if you're a clinician or front, like, make sure you understand what's expected of you and what your part on the team is.
And that was so huge when you kind of helped me. So I created my org chart, and we created scorecards and stat sheets, and and now we're going to create a dashboard. So
I love it.
we're working together on all these things, and it really, because it starts with the person at the top, whether it's you're a physical therapist and you are leading your patients, or if it is a CEO, a manager, clinical director who's leading a team in an organization, it's kind of the same thing. You kind of have to have a roadmap and know where you're going and what results you're looking for.
And I will tell you, with some of the bigger clinics that we work with, the bigger practices that we work with, that's oftentimes the pain point they come to us is, their complaint or their symptom. I said I kind of approach it like a patient. So their symptom is, I'm doing everything, I'm running around with a chicken head off, I'm doing this, I'm social media. So you're trying to do everything. And if you build in this structure and you can start shedding off those responsibilities, I heard a podcast, and I can't even give credit to who coined this term, but I'm going to look that up. But it's you delegate, you tolerate, and you iterate. So delegate those responsibilities. You can't do it all.
Right.
And tolerate, because no one's going to do it as well as Lisa Chase, at least not at first. They're going to learn. But then you iterate and you make those changes, those incremental changes, until you kind of get them hitting on all cylinders.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yes.
structure is important. And those clinical directors are super important for making sure the team is performing at a level that they should perform at. And you hit the nail on the head, Lisa. The stacker, I mean, you can't not track. You can't not track stats. You have to track stats in order to be able. If you can't measure it, then you can't manage it.
So true. And the other thing that I learned this from Darren Hardy is that you have to inspect what you expect.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that's a big one. Yeah. And that, and you get that when you set your structure and you
yes,
set the expectations of what you need to have done and what everybody's roles are and how they're measured on that. And then it's just a matter of, picking up the ball and going.
yes. Trust but verify. That's what we say over here. But yeah, I like the Darren Hardy.
Love it. All right. What's your number three?
So number 3 is the personnel. And that I want to take an aim. I mean, I can talk so much about personnel. There's a lot to talk about there. But I think the thing that is probably maybe most relatable to any audience is, I think as clinicians, we get really focused on becoming good at our craft. Like we take all the courses and the continuing ed, and I have all these different techniques and tools in our belt. But I think the thing that is so impactful that often gets overlooked are really working at refining the soft skills. So, gaining agreement with your patients, being a good listener. So the things that are, you're not going to go take a course per se on them, but I think are so impactful at getting the results from the patients that you're looking for. Yes. If, you're so great at your manual techniques and, you can get results, but you're a terrible communicator, that bridge is not going to connect you to getting the results that that you can get. So I think working on refining your skills, your communication skills, and making sure you can get patients on board with what the plan that is going to help them, where that's going to get them, then you're going to see better results from your patients.
That is so incredibly true, because, patients are coming to us as the expert. So you not only, and the therapist is an expert in their technical skill, but when it comes to being able to communicate, okay, basically what I'm finding and what, I think your prognosis and your diagnosis are, here's the plan, and being able to communicate that plan and lay it out. It's a whole nother skill.
It is, absolutely. And it's not only your therapist that has to be good at that, but your front desk has to be able to hold the line. And if someone calls to cancel, they better have a really good reason why they can't make it in that day. And they better be able to reschedule that appointment for, that given week so that they can adhere to that plan of care. So if you aren't role playing with your front desk, if you're not practicing that, that skill of, handling cancellation calls, or have some sort of phone monitoring system where you're spot checking that, I think you're missing out. And again, that's another symptom that people will come to us and say, oh, I need help marketing because I just need more patients. Well, no, you don't need help marketing. You just got to keep the patients that you have on the schedule adhering to their plan of care, because 1, it's going to get them better results, and 2, it's going to help with the health of your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, number 4.
Systems operation. You said this one, like the stackers, that like warms my heart.
I know. I used to hate them and now I love them.
Lisa knows that I'm so passionate about these things. But putting some standard operating procedures in place will just help with consistency, visibility, kind of transparency into, again, the health, monitoring the health of your practice. But systems can mean anything from, your hiring system, having a process that is standardized, that you follow time and time again. One of the things that we speak really heavily on is making sure you have a structured onboarding process. And now the virtual front desk has 44 employees now under just that division. And we absolutely have to get this nailed down and buttoned up and tightened up, because especially being virtual, you have to make sure that, one, that you're educating them, two, that they can duplicate what you're training them on, and three, that they can practically apply what you're training them on. So any systems you create, especially for that onboarding process, make sure those three components are in there. Role playing is a big one that everybody hates, but it's so important and impactful for getting people to think on their toes and kind of force them to do like the game day type of activity. So practicing it will allow you to be good when you're actually doing it and handling those.
And so for our listeners, anybody who is a practice owner is probably like shuddering and like, oh, when am I going to have time to do that? So I have two comments about that, because it is really important. So one is hiring a company like yours who already has these in place. They're all videotaped. You get an entire vault of all the systems of operations, and all you have to do is tweak it for your practice. So it is done for you, number one. Number two, there's never a good time. So one of the things I learned from another business coach, because I was kind of stressing about this, even though I had all those processes, but there were things that weren't in there that were very specific to us, right? Our core values, our attributes, and our services, and our cutting edge technologies and things like that. So, he's like, well, videotape it. Well, then even that like made me overwhelmed, right? Thinking, oh, I got to do a video production. He goes, the next time you train somebody, just record it.
Yeah.
And I just did that like earlier this year. And now like the onboarding has been so much easier, because it's not me having to do every single presentation. I've already recorded. Is it perfect? No, but it gets the job done, and so.
And it's something,
I just say,
you can't multiply yourself. You have to get smarter and more efficient in what you do. But that's awesome. The video thing is a huge time saver. And now you do want to spot check, because just because someone watches it and answers the quiz questions, that's great. That's education duplication. Now application, that's the part where you will come in and live kind of engage with them and make sure that it's retained here. And ongoing practice, just because you've onboarded a new hire and you're like, oh, okay, you're good to go. You want to spot check, periodically. And it's our job as owners and leaders, clinical directors, to spot check and help enhance our employees both personally and professionally. So be invested in them both personally and professionally. And I'll go a long way with retention, because that's the other pain point that people come to us with, is finding good clinicians.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I love those. Those are, and, definitely, learned and fine-tuned a lot of that, with using the MEG process, because I had been in practice for many years. And I didn't have my systems of operations, and I didn't have my stat sheets. And after I learned all this, I was like, how was I even functioning before?
Well, you're usually trying to like run around, keep it, with the head cut off type of thing. And you're doing it, but it takes so much energy that it limits your ability for growth. And I think that's a 100%. It's not that you can't do it. You can. I mean, you're a strong person, you're a smart person. You can do it. It's just, why would you want to work that hard for not enough output? You want to be efficient so that you can grow and expand.
Absolutely. It really has catapulted, and there's many things that I've done, but definitely that was one.
I'm so proud of you.
To catapult the practice and to build a team, you know, that can really kind of carry out the vision and the mission, right,
Yes.
of what we're trying to do. And you know, so yeah, so I think those
Yeah.
are great. I love
Oh,
those.
good, good.
Okay, well, so let's move into then valuable tips on how clinicians can get great outcomes, right? And like we've already talked about,
Mhm.
there are lots of things that go in. It's not just about, you know, the treatment of the patient. There's a lot that goes into it. And I know that you'll have kind of a fresh perspective on
Yeah.
that. So tell us about your 3 tips of how we can get great outcomes.
So again, I think going back to the communication piece,
Yes.
and being able to um, educate patients. I think sometimes, especially in an eval, everyone's stretched for time. You know, we got this whole fee for service kind of model nowadays. You have to like try and cram as many patients as you can just because we're on this crazy treadmill. I think sometimes we just check boxes and we just say, okay, I did the range of motion, I did the strength, I did this, I did, you know, check, 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 instead of really engaging with the patient and getting them to understand what's going on within their body and what we can do to help, you know, address some of the underlying causes of their symptoms. So they're going to relate to us on, you know, symptom basis because that's what they know. I know it hurt, you know, know it needs to be fixed. But I think if we can take the extra steps to help educate patients as to what's really going on and the why behind it, I
Yeah.
think you find that the follow through of that plan of care, they're going to be, you know, your biggest advocate because they understand what they have to invest into it and why. Not just, oh, I have to show up to physical therapy because they scheduled me, you know, once a week for 4 weeks and
Yeah.
show up. And their ownership for what they have to do on their own, their home exercise program, they're going to be a little bit more invested.
Yeah, no, that's so true. You know, we do a lot to educate our patients and, you know, to kind of look at the whole body and, you know, figure out all the pieces so they understand, you
Yeah.
know, one, what they have access to within the clinic, but that, you know, sometimes you have to deal with stress and sleep in order to get out of pain, for example.
Yeah.
So I think explaining and educating is half the battle, really.
Yeah. I'm going to give another like little tip that I like to do as, you know, I guess a PT business coach. I love to look outside of our industry for feedback and solutions and education and filter that through, you know, what we do. Obviously for your listeners, it would be practicing as a clinician. For me, obviously it's my kind of coaching and consulting. But I think looking outside of the industry and taking bits of information. So, you know, I love Simon Sinek and, you know, Mel Robbins and Darren Hardy and all these very intelligent people that, yes, they're not part of our, you know, our PT world, but
Sure.
a lot of the frameworks and ideas can be applied to what we do.
Yeah.
So I think that's just another, you know, piece of advice, I guess, is don't limit yourself to a box, you know, of, you know, what's in our little PT world. We're such a, you know, small, relatively in this big healthcare world. But look outside of the PT industry to kind of get ideas or approaches or tools to help you do your job better.
Yes, I think that's so great. You know, you and I have talked about some of Darren's programs, and last year I did the Hero's Journey, and wow, like what a difference I could see that making this year with implementing like all the trainings on being a leader, whether it
Yeah.
be in your community, in your office, you know, with your family, whatever it is, but how we communicate with our patients and how you get that agreement, all of those
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
It's made a huge impact
Yeah.
looking outside of just the PT. And that's what a
Yeah.
lot of times we focus on. How do I get my skills better? You know, but
Right.
the soft skills really are as important.
Yeah. And then finally, I think just being honest with yourself and self-reflecting, the stats, if you track those properly, I always like to say you have the healing hand and you have the business hand. So
Yeah.
sometimes if you are a clinician, we get so focused on that healing hand that we forget that the doors have to stay open in order for us to do what we love doing. So knowing how to take ownership of your part, and one of the things that we look at is like clinic efficiency or clinician efficiency. And if those numbers are a bit down, what can you do to help more people? Because clinic efficiency would be how many open slots are filled versus how many are open. And I think as therapists, I learned early on that it's just as much our responsibility to get new patients in, to keep people on the schedule, as it is the owner. I
Yep.
mean, we should take responsibility for that as well. And that means, asking for referrals, asking for Google reviews, making sure you're getting the word out that, we can help more people
Yes.
that way. So
Yeah, I think that that's so true. And, it's a different mindset, I think, for many clinicians, but yeah, when we're getting great outcomes, that's a perfect opportunity, to ask patients, hey, do you know anybody that,
yes.
could benefit from our services? We'd love to help more people.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm telling you, they think of it as like a compliment. I feel like, oh,
Yeah,
me, I
I
know
know.
anyone. All right, great.
Yeah.
And then I'm inevitably, they are like, oh, my Aunt Susie, like she's got this back issue. So
Yeah.
it does stimulate kind of their wheels turning, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't think of it otherwise.
Yeah.
We often would in our eval say, hey, when you start getting the results that I know we're going to get for you, I want you to keep that in mind, because think of someone else that you might help, because you kind of plant the seed early,
Yeah.
their care and in their journey. You're not asking them for a referral at that time,
Yeah.
but it plants the seed so that later, it's expected, like, hey, remember, hey, you now you can ride your bike and you can do all these things. Who do you know? Who else can I help?
Yeah.
We always come from a position of help, because that's who we are as clinicians. Like, we go into this industry because we're helpers.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is help as many people as we possibly can.
Yes, that is so true. So, well, those were great. I love those. And so now let's think about like Meg's audience, right? And what I know that Meg has also a podcast. So be thinking about, what does your audience particularly appreciate about you and your messaging, Brian's messaging? And are there a few tips that you
Yeah.
can share based on that?
Yeah. I think we were actually talking about this earlier before we hit record, but I think what makes us more unique is that we're not like a off the shelf, okay, just do all these things and you're on your own. What we're trying to do is really create a network. I think I mentioned we have over 200 owners all over the country, and now a virtual front desk, it's even growing, and we also do physical therapy billing and credentialing as well. So our services have expanded. But one of my favorite things about MEG Academy is we've created, it's now a Slack community, but basically, we try and network. PTs helping PTs. That's one
Yeah.
of Brian's tenets, is like, we want to help each other. And in that Slack community, you can ask questions. The coaches are always available, of course, to help answer any questions. But what I love most is that other owners help other owners.
Yeah.
And, oh, you know what? I've seen that, and this is what's worked for us, or different ideas, or, geographical locations have specific, information that might be relevant to someone in their geographical location. So because we're from Hawaii to New York and Florida, and everything in
Yeah.
between, we've created this network of like-minded individuals that are really passionate about helping patients, but also helping each other. I think our profession is a little bit in trouble in some ways. So we really have to kind of band together and help each other so that we can survive. And it's a great profession that helps a lot of people, and we want to keep doing that.
Well, and I think that, I have been not only involved in MEG, but in other coaching and mastermind programs.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, everybody has the same problems.
Yeah.
So having a network of like-minded people,
Yes.
whether you're looking at clinician and that kind of approach, or business and that kind of growth,
Yeah.
the problems are all the same,
Yeah.
and somebody else has figured it out. So tapping into a great network of people,
Absolutely.
I think is huge, because it just
Yeah.
saves you time and lots of money.
Yeah.
Because somebody, instead of you wasting a year trying to figure it out, you can
Yeah.
tap into somebody like, hey, this is what I did, and this, get some idea.
Exactly. Yeah. And we do a lot of like I guess free content. We have blogs, we have the podcast, we have Zoomcasts that we do where we try and bring in guest panelists. Like we just did one yesterday, and there's a guy who from Tapped Health who talking about AI and integrating AI into our profession. So it's like kind of cool, like stuff that we try and bring in if someone that we meet that kind of has something new and innovative. But I think that staying at the forefront of where we are as a profession, and start, don't focus solely on the problems, really focus on the solutions and how we can be empowered and get ahead of it. We always like to, as the Bryanism, remain at cause versus being the effect of things. So we really kind of lead with that mindset, in pretty much everything that we do. And it's worked so far. So that's good.
Definitely, which is great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, is there anything else of value? I know you're going to give that one course that you talked about, but anything else that you'd like to give our listeners that we can kind of put in the show notes that they can tap into?
Yep. If you have any, well, where am I pointing to? So megbusiness.com, if there's anything that you want to check out on us, you can reach out to me at Nicole@megbusiness.com if you have any specific questions. One of the other things that we do are what's called practice assessments. So essentially we'll do our evaluation, my PT, evaluation of your practice, where we talk specifically about what your challenges are that you're facing, and we'll want to know some of the stats so that we can kind of get an idea or a diagnosis of what's going on in your practice, and if there's something that we can connect you with one of our services to help out with that. So that's free. It's essentially I'll give you the link to that as well. But you just pick an hour time slot, and we'll meet and chat specifically about what's going on with your practice. And it could just be hey, bounce some ideas and go on your merry way, or again, we would connect you with whatever solution we think is appropriate.
Excellent. So great. So you'll send me the link to the website, which is megbusiness.com.
Yep.
Correct? Yep. And then any links so people can have access to that. Well, this has just been wonderful.
It's my pleasure. I love it. I told her, I'm like, I was more nervous for this than our normal like Zoom stuff.
You did great. You did awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. So until next time, keep getting great outcomes.
Bye, everyone.